I never thought I'd see my wife screaming at me, defending another man, especially not with his hand up her skirt, right there in our living room. But that's exactly how my life blew apart. Don't touch him. He's my first love. Madison shrieked, her voice cutting through the silence like a siren. She looked at me with fire in her eyes, as if I was the villain for walking into my own house. My fists clenched so tight I could feel my nails dig into my palms. Jake, the so-called first love, didn't even bother to pull away, he just glared back, like I was an interruption to their little reunion. For a second, all I heard was my own heart beating, heavy and furious. This wasn't a nightmare, this was my real life unraveling, one humiliating second at a time. Madison's dress was hitched halfway up her thigh. She didn't even try to hide it. She just glared at me, daring me to react. I wanted to scream, to drag Jake out of my house, but shock pinned me in place. I saw red. Years of trust, of loyalty, shattered in a single, raw moment. There's no preparing for that kind of betrayal. Then she smirked, actually smirked, like this was some kind of sick game she was winning. We've been together for 3 months, she spat, her voice dripping with pride. We're getting married. And you? You'll be left with nothing. I didn't even know what hurt more, the cheating or her complete lack of shame. Jake stepped forward, all swagger and arrogance. She never loved you, man. Just accept it. The words hit me harder than any punch. I could feel my blood boiling, my vision narrowing. Every instinct screamed at me to fight back, to make them regret ever crossing me. But Madison? She leaned into Jake, as if to prove some twisted point. You were just the backup plan, Drew, she said. He's always been the one. My hands shook, rage and humiliation battling for control. I realized, right then, that Madison wasn't sorry. She was proud of what she'd done. I looked her dead in the eyes, searching for a hint of regret, anything human. But there was nothing. Just cold satisfaction. That's when I knew, she'd planned this. The secret calls, the late-night meetings, the fake business trips, all leading up to this one brutal moment. She wanted me to break. But I didn't break. I refused to give her that victory. Then I hope he's ready for what comes next, I said, my voice low and steady. I watched Madison's smile flicker, just for a second, a crack in her armor. Jake snorted, too cocky to notice the warning. In that instant, something in me snapped. I realized I was done playing the fool. Madison and her smug boyfriend had no idea what I was capable of, but they were about to find out. I turned, my mind racing. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't fight for scraps. I'd hit them where it hurt, and I'd do it with a cold, ruthless focus they'd never seen from me before. As I walked out, Madison shouted after me, still desperate for the last word. But I was already gone, mentally checking off the steps I'd need to ruin everything they thought they'd won. That was the day my old life ended, and my new one, the one where I stopped being the victim, began. And as the door slammed behind me, I swore to myself, this story wouldn't end with me on my knees. If Madison wanted a war, she'd get one. I left the house that night with my head spinning and my heart pounding like a war drum. But let me make one thing clear, this wasn't going to be a story about a broken man sitting in his car, crying over spilled memories. No, the second I closed that door behind me, the pity party died and the fire inside me took over. Madison and Jake wanted a spectacle, they had no idea what real drama looked like. I didn't wander the streets or drown myself in cheap whiskey at a dive bar. I went straight to my brother, Tyler. He'd always told me Madison was no good, but I'd brushed it off. Now, I needed an ally who'd give it to me straight, not a shoulder to cry on. Tyler opened his door and didn't say a word. He just handed me a beer, sat down, and waited. Tell me everything, he finally said. So I did. No sugarcoating, no skipping details. I laid it all out, the skirt, the smirk, the threats. All of it. Tyler's face darkened. She's been scheming for months, Drew. You have to get ahead of this. He was right, of course. Madison thought she'd scripted every scene, but she'd forgotten the biggest wild card, me. I spent the next few hours making calls, not to lawyers or therapists, but to people who actually mattered. My best friend, Josh, who just happened to work in IT security, was first on my list. I need everything you can dig up on Madison, I told him, not bothering with excuses. Cheating, secret accounts, anything. If she's hiding something, I want to know about it before her new Prince Charming does. Josh whistled but didn't ask why. Give me 24 hours, he said. Good man. Next, I called my parents. They'd always treated Madison like family, so breaking the news wasn't easy. My mom cried, my dad swore vengeance. Typical. But I told them the truth, don't worry about me. I'm not backing down. I meant every word. Then came the hard part, accepting that my marriage was dead, and not just dead, but publicly humiliated. There would be no fixing things, no second chances. Madison had made her choice, and she'd made it loud. The only question was, what was I going to do with all this rage and betrayal? I didn't have to wait long for my answer. The next morning, my phone blew up with messages from mutual friends. Madison was already telling her version. Drew was controlling, obsessive, boring. She painted herself as the victim, Jake as the knight in shining armor, and me as the jealous loser who drove her away. The nerve. I could have laughed if I wasn't so pissed. But here's the thing, betrayal doesn't just hurt, it clarifies. Every memory with Madison began to feel like a lie. All the time she'd made me feel small, all the little digs and gaslighting, they crystallized into one cold, clear realization: she'd never respected me, not once. She was always looking for an upgrade, always auditioning new players for her drama. Jake was just the latest in a long line of suckers. I decided I wouldn't be one of them. That day, I started making moves. First, I called my lawyer, Susan, a pit bull in heels, known for never losing. She thinks she's taking me for everything? I told Susan. Let's see how she handles the truth. Then I changed every password, locked down my accounts, and froze joint credit cards. I messaged Josh again, check her email, social media, if there's dirt, I want it. If Madison wanted a fight, I was going to give her the kind of battle she'd never forget. I was done being the backup plan. Before noon, I got a text from Madison, "You're pathetic. Stop making this hard on yourself. Jake and I will be by tonight for my things." I stared at the screen, barely able to believe her nerve. But that's when it hit me, she had no idea what was coming next. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do in the heat of the moment. It's what you plan in the cold light of day. By the time Madison's message lit up my phone, I was already 10 steps ahead. Her words, "Jake and I will be by tonight for my things," echoed in my head, but they didn't sting anymore. If anything, they fueled the engine. She really believed I'd just sit there, tail between my legs, and let her strut through the wreckage of our life together. She was in for the rudest awakening of her entire miserable existence. I called Susan, my lawyer, and told her about Madison's plan to come over that evening. "She can pick up whatever she wants," Susan said, her voice sharp and focused, "but you don't say a word to her without a witness present. I'll be there." That's the kind of support I needed, cold, tactical, and absolutely ruthless. By 6 p.m., the house was stripped of anything sentimental. I locked away anything Madison might try to steal or forget she borrowed, important documents, valuables, anything irreplaceable. I even put a security camera by the front door, Josh's idea. Just in case she tries to claim you got violent or did something crazy, he'd warned me. The guy had seen enough drama in his own life to know how dirty these games could get. The clock ticked toward 7. My heart hammered with anticipation, but not fear, more like a charged, electric determination. I wouldn't let Madison and Jake see me sweat, no matter what circus they planned to bring through my front door. Then the doorbell rang, and the freak show arrived right on schedule. Madison strutted in first, flipping her hair like she was on a reality show. Jake followed, sunglasses on indoors and a cocky grin plastered across his face. He gave me a nod, condescending, like he expected me to beg him not to take my wife. "Grab your things," I said flatly. "Don't take anything that isn't yours." Madison's eyes narrowed, but Susan, standing behind me with her phone recording in plain sight, gave her a look that said, "Don't even try it." Madison sashayed from room to room, making a point to touch every surface, as if marking her territory one last time. She made loud comments for the camera. "Guess I won't miss this dump. You always had terrible taste in furniture, Drew." It was all a show, one last attempt to humiliate me. Jake tried to make conversation. "Man, you should just let it go. You're only making it harder on yourself." I just stared through him. He was nothing to me. The only thing that mattered now was getting Madison out of my house, out of my life, and taking back control. And then, as Madison was shoving some of her things into a bag, she accidentally knocked over a box of my old photos, pictures from college, vacations, the early years before her mask slipped. She laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. "Oops. Guess you won't need those anymore." For a split second, I wanted to explode. Instead, I picked up the box, righted it, and stared at her coldly. "You're right. I won't." Susan stepped in. "Madison, you have everything? Time to go." That's when Madison played her final card, or so she thought. She spun on her heel, all fake tears and trembling lips. "Drew, don't you even care that I'm leaving? After everything we've been through?" I nearly laughed in her face. The audacity. After months of lies, after publicly parading her new boyfriend, she wanted one last moment of power. Not today. I met her gaze, steady and ice-cold. "You made your choice, Madison. Now live with it." She glared at me, her mask finally cracking. For the first time, I saw something like fear flicker in her eyes. Jake hustled her toward the door, but she turned back, as if waiting for me to beg. I didn't. I watched the door close behind them and felt the weight lift from my chest. In that moment, for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized I wasn't just surviving, I was winning. I stood in the silent house, the echo of the slammed door lingering in the air like smoke after a fire. For a moment, I just breathed, deep, steady, defiant. There was no sadness left. Only a fierce kind of relief and a steely focus on what came next. The house, stripped of Madison's perfume and that artificial sweetness she'd always poured on thick, finally felt like mine again. But the game wasn't over. I knew Madison wasn't done trying to destroy me. And I wasn't done either. The night they left, I called Josh. "Any news?" I asked, pacing the living room. Josh sounded like he'd barely slept. "Dude, you won't believe what I found. She's been funneling money out of your joint account for months, transferring it to a secret stash under her maiden name. Thousands, Drew. This wasn't just cheating. She's been planning her exit for a long time." My jaw tightened. "How much are we talking?" He named a number that made my stomach drop. Madison hadn't just betrayed me with her body and her heart, she'd been stealing from me, treating our life together like a piggy bank she could smash whenever she wanted. I felt the rage building again, sharp and clear. Josh kept going. "And get this, she's already rented an apartment with Jake. The lease starts next week. She put it all under her name, using your money. I've got the paper trail. Want me to send everything to Susan?" "Do it," I snapped. "She's not walking away from this clean." After hanging up, I made copies of every document Josh sent. Bank statements. Text logs. Emails that Madison never thought I'd see. Evidence. Leverage. Every single lie, every dime she'd siphoned, I handed to Susan the next morning. She grinned when she saw the folder. "This is gold. We'll freeze the accounts, and with these records, there's no way a judge gives her the house or a cent more than she deserves. Honestly, Drew, you're going to come out of this better than most." It wasn't about the money. It was about finally having power. For the first time, Madison would have to answer for her lies. No more smirks. No more cheap shots. No more acting like she owned my life. The fallout came fast. Madison's lawyer called, suddenly desperate to negotiate a fair settlement. I said nothing. I let Susan handle it. I wanted Madison to sweat, to feel the same helplessness she tried to force on me. The humiliation must have hit her hard. That same day, her mother, who'd always loved to call me the steady one, left me a voicemail. "Drew, I'm so sorry about everything. We had no idea. Madison isn't herself." I almost laughed. Madison had never been anyone else. But the most satisfying part? Jake reached out. He sent a smug text, trying to bait me into some macho showdown. "If you want to talk man-to-man, let's meet up." I ignored him. I was done playing by their rules. My revenge wasn't a punch or a shouting match, it was stripping away their illusions. Making sure Madison lost everything she thought she'd take from me. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding. I cleared out the rest of her things, every cheap perfume bottle, every designer bag she'd borrowed from her friends and never returned. The house felt brighter, lighter. I called Tyler over, and together, we cracked open a couple of beers and burned the last of Madison's old letters in the backyard fire pit. Watching those memories turn to ash felt like reclaiming a part of myself. That night, lying in bed alone, I felt something close to peace. It wasn't happiness, not yet. But it was freedom. The chains Madison had wrapped around me, all those years of mind games and manipulation, were finally broken. I knew the road ahead would be messy, lawyers, court dates, probably more pathetic stunts from Madison and Jake. But I was ready. I'd survived the worst day of my life and come out stronger. And as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but wonder, if this was just the beginning, how far would I go to make sure Madison never forgot what she did to me? Revenge wasn't about getting even, it was about taking my life back, piece by piece. The next week passed in a blur of meetings, paperwork, and cutting ties. Madison's attempts to get under my skin only made me colder. She sent texts, ranging from pathetic fake apologies to wild accusations. "You're ruining my life. How could you do this to me?" The irony wasn't lost on me. All her crocodile tears landed on deaf ears. Susan, my lawyer, worked overtime. With every document I gave her, Madison's case crumbled. The secret apartment, the missing money, her months-long affair, it was all out in the open now. Susan grinned like a wolf every time a new email popped up. "She's digging her own grave," she told me, and I'm just handing her the shovel. One morning, I was on my way to work when Tyler called. "Check this out," he said, barely able to contain his excitement. He sent me a link. A video had surfaced on social media. Madison and Jake, drunk at some rooftop party, caught in the background while Madison ranted about her boring loser husband, and how she was about to win big in the divorce. People online were roasting her, calling her out for bragging about cheating. Even her so-called friends started to turn on her. That's when I realized something. Madison wasn't just losing me, she was losing her reputation. The very image she'd worked so hard to create, a perfect marriage, a loyal wife, was going up in flames. She tried to do damage control, posting tearful stories about how she was the real victim, but no one bought it. Not anymore. Meanwhile, Jake's confidence started to crack. He showed up at my office one afternoon, acting like he wanted to clear the air. He looked rough, bags under his eyes, shirt wrinkled, the swagger gone. "Look, man," he started, "this whole thing. I didn't mean for it to go down like this. Madison said you two were already separated. I didn't want any trouble. I let him talk, let him squirm. That's your problem," I said. "You believed her lies. Now you get to live with her. Good luck." He left, looking even more miserable than when he arrived. Watching him walk away, I felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just a clean emptiness, like I'd finally scrubbed Madison and everything connected to her out of my life. As the court dates approached, Madison became desperate. She tried every trick, showing up at my place in tears, sending me nostalgic texts about the good times, even threatening to make up stories if I didn't give her what she wanted. She underestimated just how much I'd changed. One evening, as I sat on the porch with a glass of bourbon, Madison showed up unannounced. She looked awful, makeup smeared, hair wild, voice trembling. "Drew, please. I made a mistake. Jake's not who I thought he was. Can't we talk?" I stood up and faced her, feeling nothing but steel inside. "We have nothing to talk about, Madison. You burned this bridge yourself." She tried to cry, tried to play the victim one last time. But I was done. "Go home, Madison. Or better yet, go to Jake. That's what you wanted, right?" She hesitated, then turned and walked back to her car. I watched her go, feeling lighter with every step she took away from my life. Inside, my phone buzzed, a text from Susan. "Congrats. We got the judge we wanted. Madison doesn't stand a chance." I leaned back in my chair and looked up at the stars. For the first time in a long while, I felt something that almost resembled hope. I was ready to close this chapter and build something new. But before I did, I made a promise to myself: I'd never let anyone walk all over me again. Madison had tried to turn my life into a nightmare. But she'd forgotten something important: nightmares end when you open your eyes and decide to fight back. Court day finally arrived, and with it came a storm I was more than ready for. I put on my best suit, adjusted my tie, and walked into that courthouse like a man who'd already won. Tyler was waiting at the entrance, his trademark grin giving me that final boost of confidence. "Showtime," he said, clapping me on the back. Inside, Madison looked nothing like the queen she used to act like. Her nerves showed in the way she twisted her bracelet and shot daggers at me with her eyes. Jake wasn't with her, no surprise. Even he knew when to run. Her lawyer tried to play tough, but Susan chewed him up from the first question. We sat in that cold courtroom while Susan laid out everything: the financial theft, the secret apartment, the digital evidence of Madison's affair. She didn't even have to get dramatic, she just let the facts destroy Madison's little victim act. Every time a new piece of evidence appeared on the screen, Madison shrank a little more. The judge barely hid his disgust. Madison tried to defend herself, but every excuse fell flat. She claimed I was cold and distant, but Susan flipped the script with text logs showing months of Madison lying, manipulating, and plotting. My lawyer's voice was calm, but her words were knives. "Your Honor, my client isn't perfect, but he was honest. He didn't betray his vows. He didn't steal. He didn't deceive." Watching Madison's facade crumble was almost surreal. The courtroom, so intimidating at first, became a stage for her own downfall. The judge took it all in and didn't need long to make his ruling. Madison would get nothing she hadn't earned. No spousal support, no house, no bonus payday. She'd keep her personal things, and that was it. I'd keep the house, the car, my accounts. I walked out of that courthouse with everything Madison thought she'd steal, and my head held high. Outside, Susan high-fived me and Tyler let out a loud, "Hell yeah," that made a few bystanders jump. For the first time since the nightmare began, I let myself smile, a real one. There was no victory dance, no gloating. Just a deep, quiet satisfaction. I'd weathered the storm and come out the other side, standing tall. But Madison didn't take her loss quietly. That same night, she blew up my phone with wild messages, rage, threats, desperate pleas, all mixed together. She claimed she'd ruin my name online, drag out the divorce, do whatever it took to make me pay. I just blocked her number and moved on. Jake tried to reach out, too, sending a half-hearted apology and then a thinly veiled threat. "You better watch your back, man," he texted. I almost laughed. If that was supposed to scare me, he clearly didn't know what I'd already survived. With the legal war over, I started rebuilding for real. I took a week off work, repainted the living room, boxed up all the reminders of Madison, and even got a dog, a big goofy golden retriever I named Max. For the first time in years, the house was filled with real laughter, not the fake kind Madison used to parade in front of guests. People started seeing the change in me. Tyler said I looked 5 years younger. My friends, even my parents, seemed relieved that I was back, really back. I reconnected with old buddies, started going to the gym again, and even picked up a new hobby, photography. Capturing the world through a new lens felt right. It was like proving to myself that my life could be vibrant and full again, without Madison's shadow over it. And every night, when I locked the door and listened to Max's snoring, I realized something important. Madison might have torn my world apart, but she also forced me to build something better from the wreckage. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a transformation. The dust was finally starting to settle, and with each day that passed, I felt more like myself, maybe even better than before. The old version of me, the one who tiptoed around Madison's moods, who let small insults slide and accepted half-truths, was dead and buried. What survived was sharper, tougher, and, for the first time in a long time, free. It wasn't all easy. There were nights when the silence in the house felt thick, when memories crept in and tried to convince me that I'd lost something valuable. But the more distance I put between myself and Madison, the clearer it became that I hadn't lost much at all. I'd been clinging to a fantasy, not a real marriage. Madison was never the loyal partner she pretended to be. She was a skilled actress, addicted to drama and attention. I started filling my time with new people and new experiences. Tyler kept dragging me out to meetups and barbecues, refusing to let me wallow. At first, I went just to humor him, but then I found myself actually enjoying it. There's something about good friends, cold beer, and a roaring grill that makes all the old pain shrink into the background. One Saturday, Tyler convinced me to join a pickup basketball game at the park. That's where I met Rachel. She wasn't flashy or loud, just someone with a quick wit and a killer three-point shot. We ended up on the same team, and after the game, we sat on the bleachers talking about everything but our pasts. It felt easy, natural. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. Meanwhile, Madison's world was unraveling. Her attempts to trash my name on social media backfired. Most people saw through her act. She lost friends, her family distanced themselves, and even Jake, the first love, bailed when he realized the fantasy didn't match reality. Rumor had it Madison tried to move in with him, but his landlord wasn't having it. The two of them ended up fighting in the street, a spectacle for anyone who cared to watch. I didn't. I was too busy moving on. My ex-wife's spiral was all the proof I needed that cutting her out was the best decision I'd ever made. When her mother called again, this time to apologize for ever doubting you, I accepted it, but didn't let her guilt drag me back into old messes. Max, my new dog, became my partner in crime. We took long walks through the city, explored parks I'd never visited, and he even helped break the ice with strangers. It's funny, dogs seem to have a sixth sense for knowing when someone needs a fresh start. Work started picking up, too. I got a promotion, probably because I was finally bringing my full focus and energy instead of dragging around emotional baggage. My colleagues noticed the change and even asked for advice, as if I'd unlocked some secret to resilience. And maybe I had. Here's what I learned: the world doesn't end when someone betrays you. In fact, sometimes that betrayal is the best thing that could happen. It wakes you up, pushes you to confront what you've been avoiding, and forces you to build something real out of the ashes. One evening, after another game at the park, Rachel and I grabbed dinner. She laughed at my stories and told a few of her own. There were no games, no secrets, just two people who'd both been through rough patches and decided not to let it define them. As I walked her to her car, I realized something: maybe I wasn't just healing. Maybe I was finally living. I used to think that revenge was about making someone suffer. Now I saw that real revenge was living well, building a life so full that the past couldn't touch it. Looking back, it's almost unreal how quickly everything changed once I started letting go of the past. Madison and her chaos had been my entire world, but now she was just a distant echo, a warning sign I'd never ignore again. What once felt like the end of everything turned out to be the beginning of something much better. Rachel and I kept seeing each other. There was no rush, no pressure, just honest connection and laughter. With her, I didn't feel like I was performing or pretending. She knew about my scars, and I knew about hers, but neither of us let our broken pieces define us. We went hiking with Max, tried new restaurants, and spent quiet nights talking on my back porch. For the first time in years, my life felt peaceful. Madison, on the other hand, was still fighting shadows. The last I heard, she'd bounced through a couple of short-lived relationships, always chasing that high of attention and drama. Her family kept their distance, her social circle shrank, and her perfect image faded into something pitiful. She sent me a few more messages, ranging from pathetic apologies to wild accusations, but I never responded. She wasn't my problem anymore, and it felt damn good to finally realize that. The divorce paperwork arrived in the mail one morning, final, cold, and official. I signed them with steady hands, feeling a weight lift off my chest. No celebration, no bitterness, just a simple, quiet satisfaction. I'd survived the storm. More than that, I'd rebuilt my life from the ground up. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think back to the moment it all fell apart, Madison screaming, Jake grinning, the world crashing down. It used to haunt me, but now it just felt like a story from another life. If I could go back and talk to the guy I was back then, I'd tell him this: don't be afraid of losing what's fake. Fear settling for less than you deserve. I started helping others, too. My story got around, guys at work or at the gym would pull me aside, looking for advice on dealing with their own heartbreaks or betrayals. I always told them the same thing: you can't control what other people do, but you can control how you react. Don't let their lies write your story. Write your own. Rachel and I never tried to erase our pasts. Instead, we learned from them. She told me one night, it's not about forgetting what happened, it's about making sure it doesn't shape who you become. I couldn't have said it better myself. Max curled up at my feet as I typed out the last of the paperwork and filed it away. The house was quieter these days, but it wasn't empty. Friends dropped by. Tyler and I started planning a road trip. I bought a camera lens I'd been eyeing for months and booked a hiking trip with Rachel upstate. The scars Madison left didn't vanish, but they stopped aching. They became reminders of what I survived, and of how strong I'd become. I learned that sometimes, the people who hurt you the most are just there to teach you how to never let it happen again. If anyone out there is stuck where I was, thinking there's no way forward after betrayal, listen to me: you're stronger than you think. You don't owe your pain to anyone. Use it as fuel, use it to build something better, and never let anyone convince you that you're less than enough. My cheating wife screamed, "Don't touch him. He's my first love," and for a moment, I thought my life was over. But that moment was just the start of a new chapter, one where I finally took control and learned what real freedom feels like. This is how I turned my darkest day into the foundation for the best years of my life. And if I could do it, so can you.